Hey, Crimsonites! Ooh. Okay. I said I wasn't going to use that word again. Sorry about that. Anyways, it's Crimson once again, and I'm here to give you my review on The Man of Steel. Now, I saw this movie a couple of weeks ago with my friends, which I like to add that I'd like to thank Autobot John for paying my way in. If it wasn't for him, I would never got to see the movie. But, I know I should have put a vlog up on my review then after I saw it, but things got in the way, and one thing led to another, and I kept putting it off, and before you know it, it's 2 weeks later and I hadn't put a review up yet. But I know there's no excuse for that, but here's my review of it now. Now, I'd like to state first off that I'm not really a Superman fan. I've never been crazy about the idea of how perfectly designed he was. I mean, he's almost a god in their world. His powers are unmatched by anyone, including the Hulk, according to Marvel vs. DC, which I don't agree with that at all. But, he's a Boy Scout. He has very few weaknesses, very few character flaws, at least until recent times. But, and it probably doesn't help that I'm also more of a Marvel fan. I always believe they create more realistic characters than DC have. But anyways, I want you to know that this will not affect my bias on Superman. Will not affect my opinion on the movie. I will not tear it apart. I actually went in the movie with an open mind, and I was going to give this movie a chance, to see what it could do on the big screen. And I also made sure I kept the images of the 1978 classic Superman with Christopher Reeve out of my head, because I never really liked that movie. And I know I'll get a lot of heat for this, but I thought of it as just a tad bit too campy, which I know the 70s. I mean, enough said about that. But overall, the movie was sappy, it had no real action, and the villain was a joke. But let me tell you one thing. The Man of Steel is no Superman. This movie actually far surpassed Superman, in my opinion. I mean, it was full of action. It had a villain worthy of Superman. And overall, it felt like the Superman movie that should have been made back in 1978, but never was. So, but anyways, start off with my first thing, obviously, is concerning the villain, which was Zod. And the thing I liked about Zod was he was definitely worthy of Superman's attention. I mean, he kept him on his heels. Superman had to put everything he had to defeat him. It wasn't like Lex Luthor back in the old Superman days where he had to chase nuclear missiles to stop the West Coast from sinking into the oceans just so Lex Luthor could have profit off of land. No, this was an all-out slugfest. I mean, Superman couldn't pull the punches like he had to in the original. So, this was definitely a better villain. Now, my only gripe about it maybe is that really the story itself is more like a rehash of the original Superman 2 with Zod, but I mean, it's a minor gripe. And honestly, I think they did better with the character in this movie. I think they did leaps and bounds over the other one. Not to say that the guy who played him, which I can't think of his name right now, and you'll probably shoot me for this, but not to say he didn't do a great job, but let's face it, it was the 70s once again, and, well, actually more like the 80s for Superman 2. Now, another thing I really liked about this movie was the action sequences. Oh my god. They fought all over Metropolis, Smallville, all over the world, including outer space. It's like, this was the slugfest. I mean, this is the Superman slugfest. This one, contained in one little location and some fists flung, and minor special effects. No, they went all out on this movie. The punches were laid hard, and they had to be, because Zod won't going down under normal means. He he was just as strong as Superman. So Superman couldn't pull the punches. He had to give it everything he had, and it showed in the movie. Oh my God. Now, I know some people thought the action sequences were a little drawn out, and you know what? I disagree. I feel like that to make this, the whole fight scene in the end, as epic as it was to make it as long as it was, because these are like godlike beings fighting each other. It's just not like Spider-Man facing the Green Goblin, which, you know, their battles have been epic in their own way, but Superman and Zod, these are titans. They've got to have that kind of fight that just draws out all over the world. And they gave it to us. They really did. They really delivered on it. I think this is how a Superman movie should have been all along. I mean, what we were given in 1978 was good, and I give it credit first time, and I have no problem with Christopher Reeve's acting. It's just that it was, I guess maybe it was in the wrong era that made it sappy. They didn't have the special effects needed to do the stuff they have now. But Man of Steel is definitely the Superman defining movie. It's the Superman movie everyone has always wanted and never got. So it definitely delivered. Now, just because you know, of these good points, I don't think it was a perfect movie now. I mean, it definitely had its flaws, and me being who I am, I tend to notice these little things. I'm not saying they ruined the overall movie, but there definitely had its flaws. And my first gripe, if you will, was definitely Russell Crowe's character, which was Jor-El, you know, Superman's father. I think they focused way too much time on him. It was like, it was almost like the movie couldn't survive without him. I mean, before, in the very first 78 movie, you know, he played a little part in it, a key little background character, just enough to let you know where Superman came from, where he got his ideals. And it's like, Jor-El in this one took an active part in the movie, and I think it was a little overstepped. I think that, you know, it's like they didn't believe enough in the guy who was playing Superman that he could carry the movie without, you know, Russell Crowe. I mean, yeah, Russell Crowe, the big action hero. But I think they could have cut him down a bit. And, I mean, another gripe about him is, you know, his character is supposed to be a scientist, right? And yet, when he gets in a fight with Zod in the beginning of the movie, it's like, wow, okay, that's no scientist. He's a hardened soldier. He's not supposed to be, though. He's supposed to be a scientist. And a scientist, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying just because he's a scientist he's a weak character, but Zod was a trained, trained in combat. He was developed to be a soldier. He was bred to be a soldier. He should have mopped the floor with him. But no. Apparently, Jor-El somehow can hold his own. Now, I mean, it made for some dramatic moments, and you know, it did provide some flavor to the story, but I just think maybe the fact is maybe they just paid him so much money and for a bit part, and they realized, you know, hey, we're paying him too much money. Maybe we want to put him in more in the movie to make him earn that money. I don't know. That's just my opinion. But anyways, the next part of what I had a gripe about was the actual backstory, the Superman. Now, I know I make a lot of comparisons to the 1978 movie, but because it's the only movie we got besides the Man of Steel. And I think that the first Superman movie did a very good job at telling Clark Kent, you know, Superman's alter ego's backstory about him coming to Earth, him being raised by the Kents, and him losing his father, or his adopted father, and finding out who he is. I mean, they told bits and pieces of the story, but it was so fragmented, it was hard to really get a sequence of events going. I mean, I really wish they would have explored it a little bit more. I mean, I know some people might gripe, you know, and say, well, why do the backstory? We all know who Superman is. We know where he came from. We know how he got to this point. Why worry about it? Well, I think it's important to understand more of this version of Superman by telling his backstory. I mean, I'd gladly sit through another backstory just to learn exactly how they're developing this character in this particular version. I did it through The Amazing Spider-Man. I thought it was decently done. Not getting too far off subject here, but I think a good backstory really sets the groundwork for anything else to come from this point on. And I wish they really would have focused on it more. But, you know, it's a missed opportunity and not really a lot you can do. And speaking of backstory, my other gripe about it is Jonathan Kent, which was played by Kevin Costner. Kevin Costner, excellent actor. I've enjoyed most of his movies. Not all, but most of his movies. And I really think he got crapped on in this movie. I think his scenes were cut very short. They didn't provide enough of a connection between him and Clark. And not to mention the fact of what he was teaching Clark as he was growing up. It was not like, oh yeah, be proud of your powers, help people out when you can, you know, be the do-gooder that you're going to be when you get to be Superman. No, it was like, okay, no, don't show anyone that you have powers. Don't make yourself public. It almost felt like he was telling them to be ashamed of who he was, just because he wasn't human. And I really felt throughout the sequences, throughout the backstory, they showed no connection at all, and it was a shame because Kevin Costner's a great actor, and I would have loved to see what depth he could have put into this character, but they once again, it was another missed opportunity, so I really don't know what to say about that. I mean, the only close connection I saw between these two was when he revealed to Clark about, you know, how he came to the Kents, but even then, it was like, okay, this is why we tell you to hide who you are, because they'll take you from us. I don't know. It was the same problem I had with The Amazing Spider-Man, with Uncle Ben. The first one with the Tobey Maguire and, you know, sorry, can't think of his name right offhand, but they did an excellent job of introducing Uncle Ben and how his connection with Peter was. And The Amazing Spider-Man didn't really follow suit. It sort of jumped around a bit about it, and it lost some of the emotional attachment to the character of Uncle Ben. And Superman did the same thing with Jonathan Kent. It's like, okay, for starters, his death was horrible, okay? A tornado, a little too overdramatic. I like the fact that back in 1978 when he just had a heart attack and Clark couldn't save him because it's just life. That's life. People die. And some people, I should say, you can't save. But in the new Man of Steel, it's like, okay, a tornado's coming. Clark could have saved him. Could have saved him 300 times over. But instead, Jonathan looks at him and says, no, don't do it. It's my time to go. Don't do it and reveal yourself to the world. And then, phew, he's gone. And I'm like, really? Is that the last message you're going to give to your son? Once again, emphasizing the fact to be ashamed of who you are. He's Superman, for crying out loud. Let him be Superman. I mean, I know at this point in juncture he wasn't Superman. In fact, it's really, I don't think it's really been established that he is Superman in the movie, even though the name has been thrown around during the ending parts of the movie. But, you know, at least let him be Superman. And I don't know, it was very anticlimactic. But speaking of character connections, though, I think a lot of characters had that same problem. They didn't really show any real connections to the main characters. I mean, the main focus was on, like, Superman, Zod, Leora, I think that's her name, the one who's second in command of Zod, a little bit of Lois Lane, as well as the Colonel, the guy. I can't think of his name, but hold on. I'll tell you what. I'll find his name. His name was Colonel Nathan Hardy, as well as Feora. That's what the two characters I was trying to think of. But those were the characters they focused on. They didn't really focus on anyone else, and I think they cheated some of the characters that have been staples in the Superman universe, like Martha Kent, Perry White, and even Lois Lane to some extent. I didn't feel no connection at all between those characters. It's like the love interest between her and Superman, or speaking of Lois, that is, I didn't feel it. They didn't show enough of that to really develop any kind of relationship. And yeah, I know they focused a lot on the action, and I love the action. That's one of the reasons that I enjoyed this movie, was because of the action. But being a writer, you can't make it just about action. You got to show that emotional attachment to other people, because it's a part of developing the main characters as well. You know, Martha Kent and her relationship to Clark, it helps develop who Superman is and what he fights for. Same with Lois Lane. And I don't know what to tell you about Perry. Perry was just literally just pointless. I mean, if they left him out of the movie, it wouldn't have mattered. You wouldn't have noticed, because he didn't really play any part in this movie whatsoever. I mean, the whole time, the sequence when the big fight was happening in Metropolis, and you saw Perry White and his co-workers running through the downtown areas trying to avoid buildings falling and stuff, and I felt no connection. It was like, okay, skip this over. This has no relevance to the story whatsoever. He could have died in that scene, and I wouldn't have cared. And it's a shame, too, because Lawrence Fishburne was the one who was playing Perry White, which I know it's a little unusual. You know, Perry White in the original was white, and Lawrence Fishburne, of course, is black. But they've been doing a trend of that lately in comic book movies, and I've been getting used to that ever since Nick Fury. But the fact is, Lawrence Fishburne is an awesome actor. And he's just like Kevin Costner. He was crapped on in this movie. They didn't really show any potential, any story development. The only thing they really used him for is to establish that Lois Lane worked at the Daily Planet. And that in the future, so will Clark Kent. That's about it. And I really hope that in the future movies that they really explore his character more, because I mean, he's an essential part of the Superman universe, at least during the beginning. I don't know, later on, because I'm not really, like I said, I'm not a big fan, so I haven't really read the comics, but I do know he's a staple in the universe, just like J. Jonah Jameson is for Spider-Man. So, and I also hope that Lawrence Fishburne redoes that role, jumps back into the shoes of being Perry White, because I think it would be a loss if he does not. I wanted to see what he could do with his character, and see development in his relationship with Clark and Lois. So I'm hoping that he comes back. But anyways, that was my main gripes with the movie. But you know what? Despite the flaws that I saw based off of that, it was still a good movie. I enjoyed it immensely, and I didn't think I would. Because, I'm not a Superman fan. I thought I was going to be bored to tears again. And I thought I was going to be let down, and I was blown away. This movie really showed me something new. So, I guess you could say I'm giving a thumbs up. Anyways, no, really, it's just, I really wish this movie would have been made in 1978, because if it had, I might have been a Superman fan. Because, growing up with the Christopher Reeve version, and I know there are huge followings for Christopher Reeve, just like with the Batman movies and Michael Keaton. There's huge followings for that, and when these new versions come out, they're a little like, oh, that's secret territory, but you know what, we gotta move on. It's time for a new actor, because one, Christopher Reeve can't take the cape and the blue and red suit anymore, because, well, He's no longer with us. So it's time for another person to step up and take the role, which I think he did an outstanding job for. So, but I'm getting carried away here. Anyways, this is an awesome movie. I would suggest anyone who has not seen it to please see it. You have to. It's a must. It's a must-see movie of the summer. And for all you Superman fans out there, I suggest you see it at least 3 times. Yes, that's right, 3 times. One more time, 3 times. But so, anyways, I give this movie a 4 out of 5 rating, out of 5-star rating, despite its flaws. Now, I might not be lenient on the next movie if these flaws show up again, but I could overlook them. So, would I see this movie again? Hell yeah. Would I buy the movie? Yeah. Would I recommend it? That's what I'm doing. So, anyways, go watch it. Really, it's a great movie, and I think you will not be disappointed. So, anyways, this is Crimson, calling it a day. Crimson out.